Hey, what's up, everyone? Today marks the date back in 2015 when Lisa DePasquale's article, Political Punks, was published on Breitbart. The article also marks the first time the two of us collaborated together because I not only produced the awesome custom graphics for the article, but the idea behind the piece itself came from a conversation we had about certain conservatives and libertarians who we saw as having actual cultural credibility. We called these conservatives and libertarians political punks. Now, what does actual cultural credibility mean? What that means is they appreciate mainstream culture, specifically pop culture, for the power of storytelling, in that they understand that through storytelling, you can further messages of liberty, freedom, and that which is inherently good and exceptional about America and Western civilization. They also understand that unlike those constantly outraged on both the right and the left, not all of America views everything through a political lens. To quote Lisa's article, they are anti-authoritarian. They are punk. They go against the liberal culture scene and the conservative political scene. These punks are our best hope for engaging new audiences on the importance of liberty. The punks we focused on in the article were Greg Gutfeld, Ann Coulter, Clint Eastwood, and Gavin McInnes. And you can see that from this Photoshop mashup I did of the 1976 debut album from the Ramones with Greg, Ann, Clint, and Gavin. And I still absolutely love this graphic. I think it turned out fantastic. It's one of those ones which aged really well. Other honorable mentions were Mike Rowe, Andrew W.K., David Mamet, James Woods, Lisa Kennedy, and our good friend Nick Gillespie. Soon after the article, we launched the Political Punks podcast in an effort to interview these people and give them a platform to focus on their own projects and talk the broader culture war going on in America. We interviewed Greg Gutfeld, Terry Schappert, Ann Coulter, Scott Baio. We interviewed Nick Gillespie and many others. The show proved that Andrew Breitbart was right. Politics is downstream from culture. It also proved that you cannot fight, let alone win the culture war, just complaining from the sidelines. About a year into the podcast, Lisa and I became just way too busy, so we had to kind of walk away from it, but we always intended to return to it at some point. I'm happy to announce that we have relaunched Political Punks with a slightly different format, but with some familiar and new faces. We plan to record 2 one-hour shows a month with a rotating slate of guests, just depending on who's available. For our pilot episode here, Nick Searcy, Terry Schappert, Matt Palumbo, and Chris Barron joined me, and we had an absolute blast. I had some technical issues with this episode, which I have ironed out since, so we joined this show already in progress, where the fellows and I are discussing the future of the GOP as Trump's party. Enjoy and stay tuned for the next episode of Political Punks to drop this weekend. Take it easy.
You. So I think that's the other thing that they miscalculated this big time, because we understand Trump's limitations and we understand his faults because we all have them. But if you attack our guy in such a blatant, dishonest and power hungry way, people like me, people like you guys, we will automatically and reflexively defend Trump because because it's obvious you're attacking us. Yeah, he's Trump, but we're the one, we elected him. And the more you crap on us and the more you try to put your thumb down on us, we've had an excellent, successful educational system for decades that have beaten down the United States citizen into thinking that we all suck and that we should capitulate, but it hasn't been beaten out of us yet. And so the people who get their backs stiffened up by this, who are like, my father, God rest him, you just died. He was the he really disliked Trump's personality and the kind of stuff he did. But I used to tell Dad, I said, Pop, just don't listen to what he says. Don't pay attention to what he writes. Just watch what he does. And you'll see a really effective conservative president who just hasn't really backed down. And he's an ego-driven guy. And I don't think, in retrospect, I bet we could all agree. I'm curious your takes on this. I don't think anybody else could have beaten Hillary in 2016. I don't think it would have happened.
No way. I mean, that first debate, man, with what was there, 9 of them up there or something?
No way.
I remember that first primary when he answered his first question. I was just like, that's the guy. That's the guy. He's got the killer instinct. Nobody else on this stage will go for blood. And I liken it to Jordan. Jordan said one time that when you're in the third quarter and you're up maybe 10 or 15 on a team, and you're coming into the fourth quarter, usually you rest all your starters, right? And you throw all your B-listers out there to rest your starters, and you got 15 points up, no problem, right? You just run out the clock. Jordan and Phil Jackson were like, no. We're going to go back in there with all of our starters in the fourth quarter. We're going to go back up another 15, okay? And the whole thing was, not only do you win the game, but you crush your opponent's soul. I mean, you absolutely destroy them. So the next time you show up, you're all out there, on deck getting ready to start the game in the first quarter. They remember that game. They're like, oh shit, these guys they were up 15 on us in the fourth, and then it started, and then they're up 20, and we went down by like 30 points. I'll never forget that. But I mean, that was the whole thing, and that's what I saw with Trump. I was like, that guy will go for blood. And he was a dick. When he said this stuff, when he said this stuff about McCain, I was like, he's finished. Right? Like I thought he's done. Right, Matt? What do you got?
Actually, I was going to say I was watching some like vintage Trump clip from 20 years ago, and someone brought up McCain, and he goes, "I mean, is he really a hero? He got captured." That line, I have it on my phone. He's been using that line for 20 years.
I mean, that's an awful, callous.
It's a horrible thing to say.
I mean, like I thought, and by the way, I still don't forgive him for that. But I also, here's a difference between and McCain. He's dead. God rest him. But he really screwed us over. And it was all because of ego, because of Trump shitting on him. The difference is someone like Ted Cruz, who was also equally shat on by Trump. But Cruz actually, whether you like him or not, he kind of put that aside when he saw that Trump was doing conservative things and moving the country forward. So he put aside his ego that had been really insulted by President Trump. And he still tried to get the work done. I actually respect Ted Cruz even more for that. Again, if you don't like him, cool. You don't agree with him politically, but that was a different thing. And again, if you keep poking a dog or poking a bear or kicking them, they're eventually going to attack back. And eventually, people just have had. I mean, I'm telling you, man. It's not that we love, and a big mistake the media is making is assigning everything we feel and everything we respect to a pure, naked adoration of Trump, and it's not.
No.
It's not.
Because guess what? I think all of us would agree Trump is petulant and petty and thin-skinned and narcissistic. And you want to know what? I don't know anybody who disagrees, and I don't give a shit.
That's right.
I don't give one shit. I didn't vote for the guy who I thought was going to be the nice guy. In fact, I voted for the guy who I was positive would be a dick. I wanted him to be a dick.
Yes.
Yeah, he's just like me.
Well, I was just going to say, all of us are kind of like that. I mean, all of us are thin-skinned and petulant to a degree. I mean, we're all human. I think that's part of the appeal with Trump is that he's sort of everything's out there on the table.
He's just a real guy. He's just
a real guy.
Yeah.
Exactly. But I mean, I wanted Gordon Gekko. I wanted a hard-nosed business son of a bitch to walk in like that scene where he goes into Teldar Paper, which is the greed is good scene. But he goes in there and he just eviscerates all these CEOs. And he's basically talking about how all of these vice presidents make $300,000 a year and they don't own 1% of ownership in the company that they run. And it's an analogy to DC. The people in DC have no ownership in the country, basically. They don't care about any of us. It's all personal. But that scene reminds me of kind of of Trump walking into DC and just basically calling it the way it is and being a dick, because frankly, in that world, you have to be a killer. You've got to be a killer.
By the way, being president didn't change him. I was in a meeting in the Roosevelt Room, which is right off of the Oval Office, the night before the State of the Union a couple years ago. There's like 10 of us in there to get like this off-the-record briefing about the State of the Union.
Oh, cool.
And Trump walks in, and he had been on the phone, I think, with the Prime Minister of Vietnam or something. And then Trump starts doing like an impersonation of the Prime Minister of Vietnam, like really bad Asian accent and everything. And he's looking around, he's like, fuck, I didn't know you were going to be here. Fuck it. I can't, this guy right here, that's my best guy. Like, I mean, he's just go like,
that's a great story.
Sanders turns like 3 different like shades of white. I mean, she's ready to pass out. Like, I mean, I'm like, this guy is the exact same guy. Like, there was nothing about being president.
Hysterical.
changed him. And I like left there and thought, a lot of people might leave and think like, God, that guy is crap. I left and thought, thank God he's still the guy.
Dude,
yeah, that's funny. That's a great story, man.
Dude, you remember the story that recently came out about Sarah Sanders and Trump and everybody out in South Korea with Kim Jong-un, where Kim Jong-un winked at Sarah Sanders?
No, I don't remember that.
They were all in like a presser, and it was over with. So they were all kind of off to the side, and the two groups were kind of just sort of saying goodbye or whatever. And Kim Jong-un and like Trump saw it. Like multiple people saw this. I think it's in Sarah's book. I think that's how this came out. But Kim Jong-un like winked at her, and she was just kind of like, oh shit, like, you know, like what's that all about? So they get back in the limo, they get back in the Beast or whatever, and Trump looks over at Sarah and he's like, hey, he winked at you. You got to take one for the team. Like everybody just fucking like just erupted in laughter, including her. She thought it was hilarious.
We've had issues with North Korea, so we don't. I can't confirm or deny what happened. But
I got to tell one story. The first time I saw Trump was right after he made the announcement that he was running, and he said the whole, Mexico isn't sending us their best kind of thing. He did a speech for the top secret Hollywood FOA, out in California. And I wasn't going to go. I just didn't take him seriously. But it turned into such a circus that I decided to go. And so I put on a Lucha Libre mask, and we rolled past all the protesters were out there with signs that saying, we are people too or whatever. And I had my Lucha Libre mask on, hanging out the window, waving at them. And they started going, Mil Mascaras, Lucha Libre, and all this. So anyway, we go in, and I'm like, I'm not taking it seriously at all. But Trump, they introduced Trump. Trump comes into the back of the room. There's this big light down on him. He looks like some sort of like crazy, Egyptian statue as he walks through the room. There's 1,000 people there. And Trump gets up there, no notes, no nothing, 45 minutes. It's like the best stand-up routine I've ever heard. I'm hitting my head on the table. I'm laughing so hard. He's like going to, stuff like, Carly Fiorina, I like her. I just wish she could keep a job, all this stuff. And I walked out of there thinking, that guy could win. He's hilarious.
Everybody has to acknowledge, even the people who hate him, if they can just step out of their ego, we've never had a more entertaining president ever.
No, there's one debate with Fiorina where he made some comment about how she didn't smile enough. And the next debate, she was smiling.
Remember, he said he's like, look at that face. He's like, how can you look at that face for 40 years?
Look at that face. Yeah.
It's terrible. He's terrible. Yeah,
he did the same thing. He did the same. Talking about how he was busted on Cruz. He also busted on Rand Paul. He made fun of him. He goes, he's like, look at that hair. He's like, what's going on there?
I was a Rand guy at the time.
Yeah.
What the hell is this guy even doing on the stage? Yeah. He's so far down there, I can barely even see him. Like,
yeah. I mean, he's awful. Well, Nick, I remember, dude. I forget where I was driving, but Nick filled in for Rush Limbaugh, and I think I told you this. I was riding somewhere on a highway, and there's Nick at motherfucking Searcy filled in for Rush, and that analogy, I remember you said this, and I was like, that is absolute gold. Other people stole it, but this is the first time I heard it was from you, that Trump is the wrestling heel president.
Yeah.
He is. He's like that bad. He's the dude who'll come out and hit you over with a chair, and you want to hate him, but then he comes back and he's good. Nick, that was just the best analogy.
He's like Stone Cold. He's like Steve Austin. He just comes in swinging the chair right away. It's not like he does it in retaliation. He starts with it.
Well, I don't know if you guys saw, but there actually was a Trump WWE storyline that lasted a few episodes. How to defeat Vince McMahon to buy the WWE.
Yeah. Didn't he shave Vince McMahon's head?
Yeah.
He shaved Vince's head. Yeah.
That was insane.
I mean, come on. The president of the United States did that stuff.
Yep.
I wish. Can't we just enjoy that a little bit? Like, come on.
He also clotheslined the shit out of Vince McMahon, but
that's right.
He ran around the ring and whack. It's great. He's just
these last 4 years have been a party, and it's been so much fun. I have even the left going crazy has been obviously disappointing, but not unexpected. But honestly, last 4 years have felt like 8. from the standpoint of, I think, the things that he got done. And I knew it would be like that. I knew it would be like just pedal to the metal, full steam ahead, 150 miles an hour, basically, just redlining the whole way. And, the guy's got a lot of accomplishments. It was a blast. It was a lot of fun. We can do it again. I still think it's possible. And, frankly, it's up to him. It's his party, and it's up to him in 2024 going forward what he wants to do.
But they need to wake up because Trump, the disdain and that I have for the most people are for Republicans, because that's the only thing, that's what really held him back from getting even more conservative things done, was the cowardice of the Republican Party. And I think the cat's out of the bag on that. Like, we see it's all a joke to them. It's all a big joke. They never had any intention of doing these things, not really. And so he would have gotten more things done. But Trump made a big mistake too. He did not understand who was in his own camp, his own staff, the White House, everybody around him was like a bunch of serious assassins. And he was hamstrung can you imagine if Trump had the kind of people around him that Obama did, that closed ranks and defended him and would, take a bullet for him? Dude, so many people in his camp just try to throw him under the bus. And we see that and we sympathize with that.
By the way, Terry, staffing was the biggest problem in the White House ever. Like, by far the absolute biggest problem was staffing. They relied on the conservative think tanks in DC to be their staffing agency. Which meant we just got a whole bunch of people who frankly didn't like Trump at all. They wished we would have had Romney or Jeb. They couldn't stand this guy. They didn't like him. That meeting I told you about I did in the White House. It was a completely off the record meeting. I literally wasn't even home yet from leaving that White House meeting when I got a phone call from a reporter with Axios saying, I understand that you were at a meeting at the White House tonight. I was wondering if you'd be willing. And I was like, somebody fucking called a reporter immediately. There's
already
asshole. Literally there's 10, what a freaking honor to be there the night before the State of the Union for this briefing. What a great moment. And some a-hole in there is already calling Axios to let them know that who attended. I'm like, this is a problem, man. Somebody in that room did that. I'm like, you can find out who that person is. They should never get to step foot in the White House ever again.
It was just, you're right, man. And that happened to him all the time. You can lay some of that blame at his feet because his judgment. But I think, he wasn't in the political world, and these people come in. He's like, hey, Mr. President, this is the good guy to talk to about this or do this. And he listened to them and he took it and he took the shiv in the back. Yeah. That angers me. And I think, again, this isn't about Trump. It's about what they'll do to not let us have the kind of country that we want. And even right now, all the thing I talked to you guys about before we came on, we see that. And, there's guys like us and people like us that just, if you get crapped on, you just push back sometimes reflexively. And they still don't get that. They still don't get that. They're even trying to do more stuff to us.
Well, it's like we talked about. They've never reconciled why they lost in 2016. No. Hillary's never reconciled. She never will. But the party's never reconciled. And they've never tried to understand why 65 million people in 2016 voted for Trump. And they certainly have no interest in understanding why another 10 million people voted for him in November.
That's right.
But Brett, the Republican Party doesn't understand either. The Republican Party doesn't understand why Trump won in 2016, and they don't understand why 75 million people would walk across hot coals to vote for Trump in 2020. They think the Mitch McConnells and Liz Cheneys of the world think that they're just going to put the genie back in the bottle and that we'll go back to the way things were, and they never will. And by the way, people are like, I don't understand how come the Republicans could never replicate success without Trump at the top of the ticket. I'll tell you why. Because rank and file Republicans don't trust their own fucking elected officials. You knew if you went and stood in line for Trump and you voted for that guy was going to do exactly what he said he was going to do. If you went and voted for your congressman, your senator, maybe half the time they do what they said they do. Maybe that might actually be a good percentage. So why are people going to stand in line for hours and hours to go vote for some yahoo that they think, maybe they're going to do their job, maybe they won't.
Right.
Yeah. No, absolutely. It's like I keep saying, they think that getting rid of Trump, even on the GOP side, they think getting rid of Trump or having him out of office is going to get rid of MAGA and America First. And they fail to see that the more they distance themselves from America First and MAGA, the more they distance themselves from 75 million voters. And frankly, I think the Republicans just want to be a minority party. They want to sit around on their ass and piss and moan and be victims and just be oppositional and collect a check, because frankly, it requires way less work than what Trump has been dragging them kicking and screaming into over the last 4 years, which is actual success. How do you achieve success? You have to fucking work. You have to do stuff. You can't just go up there every 4 years and say, we're going to change healthcare, we're going to lower taxes, we're going to get the debt under control, we're going to stop deficit spending, blah, 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 and do nothing. And it's the same with the border. I mean, I still think that's probably the number one reason why he got elected, was just the out of control border. You can't
Does anybody think Mitt Romney would have nominated Amy Coney Barrett? Does anybody think Mitt Romney would have stuck with Kavanaugh in the middle of all that? No, absolutely not. Trump's the only guy who would have done that. Like he has the opportunity to move the court to the right for an entire generation. And every other establishment Republican would have said, we got to go find a Merrick Garland. We got to go find a guy who can get through, who's not going to tick people off. And Trump's like, no, I've been saving ACB for this one. Like, let's do it. And it's
I think the Kavanaugh thing was you bring that up. That's a good one, because that was kind of early in his presidency. And I think that was a good indication of another good thing that Trump did in his presidency is smoke out all these people that would say one thing and do something else. So if you remember the quickness to capitulate on the Republicans when Kavanaugh was getting completely crushed by these people, that was a good lesson, because look around and see who's really willing to just walk away from this and think that's okay. I mean, a lot of Republicans were afraid to even fight for Kavanaugh, even knowing he's a decent guy. They didn't have the stomach for the fight. And I thought that was a very good indication of the sort of struggle in the country right now. Do you capitulate, to what they want, or do you kind of try to carry it forward and do the best you can?
Yeah. And I think Jesse Kelly tweeted something last week where he said, we picked Trump because he's the guy who we recognized would protect us from the left. Right now the right feels surrounded. I mean, we all do. And we felt surrounded in 2016. We certainly feel surrounded now. But we picked him because we knew he was the best person to stand in between them and us. And, and frankly, that is going to be what people are going to be looking for in 2024. The only question is, liberals didn't like Trump Part 1. They're really going to hate Trump Part 2. If it is Trump Part 2, it might be someone else. It might be somebody even more hardcore.
I don't mind being surrounded by people who don't want to take away my freedom. I do have a problem being surrounded by people that want to take things from me, and that's the difference. It's not about a right or left camp. If you think about what the right wants, really, they want minimal government involvement, maximum freedom, right? Individual freedom, minimal taxes, things like that. So, I mean, I don't care if you go to the right. Basically, that's what the right should stand for. And I don't mind being surrounded by left-wing people, but the left-wing people I notice don't really have my best interest in mind. They tell me they do, but they want to take things from me. You know what I mean? So it's not about I don't like you because you're left-wing. I kind of don't trust you because I notice you kind of want to take freedom away. You want to take from me, and that's a problem.
Yeah, or you're a bunch of Democrats who make rules about COVID but don't follow them yourself. I mean, it's
all of a sudden all the big city. So I don't mean to talk over anyone.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, all of a sudden, all the big city mayors are saying lockdowns don't work. and the thing is, we're now at 4,000 COVID deaths a day, which is 4 times higher than it was in March. And I'm going, well, so now is the time you admit this? Not 75% less. It's just, come on.
Unbelievable. Yeah.
And frankly, that's Republicans too.
The lockdowns were never about the virus anyway.
That's true.
Shutting the economy to hurt Trump. They have nothing to do with stopping the spread and all that.
That's true.
The thing is too, even if let's say they do work in stopping the spread, I mean, the vaccine is a miracle, but most people a year ago would have said it would have taken at least 4 or 5 years. So with that context, everyone's going to get this thing anyway.
Right.
Therefore, as long as hospitals can accommodate, there's just no point.
Right. That's right. That's right.
Oh, by the way, I just wanted to say that Mitt Romney is a complete scumbag because for a modicum of reasons. But that woman who yelled at him the other day in the airport and videotaped the whole thing, she's been banned, put on the no-fly list of whatever airline that was, and Mitt Romney has no problem with it.
And back in 2012, the leftists did this to Romney. How much praise that woman would be getting?
Oh yeah, they say, "Oh, that's civil disobedience." That's
correct. Yeah,
that's true. That's right, Matt. Yep.
But it's just so funny. It's like that woman walked up to him and she's got her phone and he's like, "Please put your mask on. Please put your mask." Little Pierre Delecto. I mean, what a wuss! It's unbelievable. He's like some emasculated Ken doll or something. It's just
So Tucker had a monologue a couple of nights ago, and he completely hit the nail on the head, as he usually does. The establishment hates the base. I mean, they really do. Yeah, Mitt Romney, mom pants Mitt Romney, doesn't want to go to the reddest places in America. He hates those places. I live in an 85% Trump precinct. Mitt Romney wouldn't even slow down in our neighborhood, he doesn't want to be anywhere near us hillbillies.
Do you remember? He reminds me of John Kerry. Remember when John Kerry ran and he went into some flyover country hunting store? Oh yeah. And he walks in and he's all decked out in the gear and everything, the camo and the whole fucking shit. And he's like, "Can I get me a hunting license here?"
Yeah. Well, it's like Elizabeth Warren getting me a beer,
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Hello,
or Andrew Yang walking the other day in a bodega. Hey, hello.
That was so good.
He's peeling the bananas off, and he can't get it. He's like, "Oh, I'll just buy the whole thing." He's like, "I owe everybody $1,000 anyway, so what's the big deal?" What a dick. Unbelievable.
Hey, Nick, I had a question for you because you live out on that coast. There were things on with marches and stuff in Beverly Hills and that. So there was legitimate Trump support in that area, wasn't there?
I went to a couple of them. Yeah, it was shocking. I mean, I went to the one in Beverly Hills. There was one there at this little park in Beverly Hills that a few years ago they had a Tea Party rally at. There was about 300 people. I went to that thing in Beverly Hills with the Trumps right before the election. That had to be like 5,000.
I remember seeing that and wondering if you were in that area because there was a lot of people there for that.
No, I was there waving my Trump flag. I was trying to get some work in Hollywood. Hey, look.
That's how you do it, right? All right, hey, let's switch over to we've done a lot of politics. Let's switch over and talk some culture. One of my favorite shows is Cobra Kai. I've been watching it since it was on YouTube. I know there's a lot of people who are just now getting into it, but this show, and I've been watching some of it today, especially the first season, it lampoons the left all the time. I mean, it makes fun of, the millennials, the Gen Zers. I mean, and largely it's all from a Gen X perspective, right? There's no boomers in the show, really. It's just basically Gen Xers and really Gen Zers. I noticed there's not a whole lot of millennials because we're dealing with high school kids. So culturally, I find this show really fascinating. I'm amazed it got made. It is produced by Sony. It's not produced by Netflix. Thank God. Otherwise, it wouldn't be the show it is today. But it's finally, and I've been kind of waiting for this, it's finally coming under fire. It's this LA Times critic. It's always a critic, obviously. And this comes from our friends from boundingintocomics.com. Author Jen Yamato turned her attention to the fact that there are now 3 white men at the center of Cobra Kai, a franchise rooted in deeply indebted to Eastern tradition, and how after 30 episodes on 2 platforms, Cobra Kai has yet to cast an Asian lead. In response to these criticisms, series creators John Hurwitz, Hayden Schlossberg, and Josh Harold told Yamato that they were well aware of the criticisms. Having made Harold and Kumar go to White Castle, we've been particularly sensitive to the Asian American representative in movies and television, said Schlossberg. Chris, you and I love this show. I mean, I know how much you love it. You probably love it as much as I do. And it has a lot of diversity in it from my perspective, which fits the show. It's not forced, right? What they're suggesting, obviously, is forced and sounds awful. But I just think this is just what the left does. And it's probably high time that they turn their sights on Cobra Kai.
The whole point behind the Karate Kid originally was this idea that martial arts had gone mainstream. You know, that like every like mall in America, there was a little dojo where you could go, where little suburban.
That was true. That was true in the 80s. I mean, karate was huge across America.
And that, like, that,
they're so
wrapped around the axle about this idea of like cultural appropriation and, you know, failure to represent all cultures in everything all the time. And it's like, I can't imagine looking at the world like that constantly. I can't imagine only seeing the world through that kind of twisted lens. You know, like, I mean, look, I'm Irish. Like, all of my relatives were all Irish, you know, like, I'm not mad at Notre Dame for having the Fighting Irish as their mascot. I don't
so you're a drunk. That's what you're saying, essentially.
I don't get mad on St. Patrick's Day. Like, why would I? Like, I'm thrilled people even spend one day getting drunk saying yay for the Irish. You know, like, that's amazing. Like, why are they so wrapped around this axle so tightly that this is the only lens through which they can see the world? I don't get it.
I don't either. You know, and again, you know, one of the things I love about the show is that it lampoons the woke culture. It lampoons what Bret Easton Ellis calls Generation Wuss. And it's not just Johnny, you know, Daniel Kreese, everybody throughout the show lampoons the left. You know, and, you know, Nick, why is it that these critics always know what's best for these shows but can never sell a fucking script of their own to Hollywood? Like, what's that about?
Well, they can't see anything except through the prism of race. They've been taught that this is how we have to look at society. So even a piece of even just a stupid TV show, which I've seen a few episodes of Cobra Kai, but I don't watch a lot of stuff that I'm not in because I just immediately assume they don't have good taste. But you know, I think this whole idea of like you've got to have you know, an Asian character in a show about karate, isn't that racist already? Isn't that like stereotypical right away? It's like, what, only Asian people learn karate? What are we even talking about? It's like, how are you going to tell a story about two aging white guys doing karate if you don't have two aging white guys? You know?
I have a funny story about Karate Kid. So it came out in 83 or 84. I think. Yeah. My life kind of mimicked that a little bit. I moved around a lot when I was young, and my dad was an IBM exec. So I moved my senior year in high school, and I was a football player and stuff. And I started studying, you know, Okinawan karate with this guy. And I ended up having a girlfriend who was former girlfriend of like this big tough guy in school. So seriously, man, like I remember studying. I've been studying for about a year, and I remember going to my instructor, my sensei. I said, "Sensei, I think I might have a problem with this guy because he's a lot bigger than me, you know, and he's really a violent dude." And I'd been training for a year, and he goes, so we talked about it. We trained. The guy never came at me, but it was like when Karate Kid came out, I was like, oh man, this is I was a little bit different than Daniel. Yeah. But it was pretty funny because it kind of was my thing. I was training and I had a potential bully in my life, and there was a girl involved. And you know, it's sad because The Karate Kid is a great movie. You know, Rocky is a great movie, and I just don't understand.
Directed by,
what's that?
That's funny you bring that up because John Avildsen directed Rocky and directed The Karate Kid.
That's right. That's right. And you know, again, that story transcends race. It transcends that kind of stuff too. You know, and Apollo Creed was in Rocky. Again, it's kind of something, and it's kind of you know, Nick and I have actually talked about this offline. I don't know how the question is, we can bitch about it all day, but the question is like going forward, is there a solution to this? And I don't know. You know, Nick is the international TV and film star, and I just do like silly hosting shows with guns. But and Nick, I mean, what do you think? How does this? We can bitch about it all day. We bitch about media buying all day. But how does this get fixed? Is it possible? Do we need people with money, like conservative people, to try it? Is that how it works? What do you think, man?
Yeah, it's basically we have to split from Hollywood. Hollywood's not going to be fixed.
Okay.
We have to segregate. Hollywood leftists love segregation anyway. So we need to build our own entertainment industry. We need to build our own platforms. You know, I've been talking about that, trying to do that with a group called Criado Studios and that kind of thing. But we have to build platforms where we aren't censored, and then we have to get conservatives convinced that the culture matters enough for them to invest in creating entertainment. That's really the only way.
Well, and you
never gonna let us have a voice. So.
Well, you nailed that with Gosnell, which is an absolutely. If anybody hasn't seen that movie, you need to go see it because Nick, that was your project, and it's just it's frustrating because because it takes a lot of money, and they're not going to relinquish that kind of control. And it's kind of like almost like the same thing about rebuilding the Republican Party. Why do we got to leave? Why do you have to leave? But I guess you kind of do. I don't know.
Yeah, no, they've been at it for 50, 60 years building their side of it. It's going to take us a while, but we're going to have to build our own because they're not going to let us use theirs.
That's true. Okay. I know that's always been your take, and I agree with you. I think we could cry about it, but ain't going to change.
And by the way, Nick, I mean, look at what they did to Roseanne. We had one show on TV, one show that didn't even praise Trump, but showed a Trump supporter as a sympathetic, normal person. And that couldn't stand. They couldn't allow that to happen.
Yeah, she was tapping into what Family Ties had in the 80s, which was, obviously the two different political sides living under one roof that disagreed vehemently, but at the end of the day, they loved and they respected each other because they're family. And that has to transcend politics. And that show
the left doesn't want that out there.
No, they don't.
You can't get along.
Well, and I think Cobra Kai, as much as I love this show, and I think as long as it stays at Sony, I think that it's insulated from Netflix. But if Netflix gets control of the production of this show and has say in the writing, it's going to be completely and totally subverted, like every other thing is. And I've been saying this about The Mandalorian too. Everybody's after Gina Carano right now. And she just did a fabulous interview with Ben Domenech on The Federalist, that everybody should check out.
Oh, cool, yeah.
But, Jon Favreau, I believe, is protecting Gina Carano on The Mandalorian because John's old school Gen Xer, and I don't think really gives a shit about her politics. I think what he cares about is that she makes a successful show. She helps it make it rain green, and that's what's important right now. However, I believe at some point in time they will ruin The Mandalorian. And they will ruin Cobra Kai because the left are like fucking locusts. They destroy everything.
Look what they did to Wonder Woman with Wonder Woman 1984. Like there was all this pushback against Gal Gadot after the original Wonder Woman because former Israeli military, which of course means she must be a Nazi. And that the twisted world of the left, like anybody from Israel, is automatically
out there.
They're everywhere.
So they had to make Wonder Woman 1984 so woke that it's unwatchable. They had to overcompensate. Oh, we're still leaving Gal Gadot in, and she's Israeli army, so we better make this movie really super woke.
Yeah. So
I'm sorry, Matt. I cut you off, Matt. Go ahead, Matt.
No, someone did like a meme. It plays off Brett's point of like what a movie about the moon landing would look like if Netflix made it. Someone drew a sketch, and it was like a disabled transgender woman in a wheelchair rolling on the moon. It's like every Netflix film at this point.
But Nick, I kind of want to. So, do you think because this is your industry and you are a player in it? Do you think Do you think it's possible? Or is it happening, or is it possible but not happening yet? That there's a way to wrest some control of this from the forces that are doing what they're doing right now?
I think the only way to do it is to build a competitor, really. Because you have to understand what's happening in Hollywood now. They don't care what the audience thinks. None of them care. And the thing that's going to happen to Cobra Kai is that once the critic says this about them, they are then going to change because they know that their next job is not dependent on the audience. It's dependent on the guys next to them. It's dependent on the guys they work with. So everything in Hollywood is geared towards impressing each other about how woke we are.
Interesting, right?
That's the way they get their shows on the air. They wouldn't be able to get them on the air any other way. And if you sneak one in, you got to sneak it in. You got to lie to them.
Yeah, okay.
That's just the way it works. And
that's why you're saying the only way to do it is just
solution is a new
platform. A competitor. Okay, that makes sense. I think that makes sense.
This is no different than what I did with Peter Schweizer on Clinton Cash. We are basically tapping into a market that is underserviced. There's 75 million people out there now. In 2016, there was 65 million potential customers for things like Clinton Cash. And then going forward, I did Thump, and we did Trump Space Force, and we did Agent Poso. You do these graphic novels and comics because our side has to create content. You can't be a counterculture unless you are creating culture. You can't fight a culture war unless you are creating culture and participating. We've ceded this ground in entertainment to the left because we kind of gave up maybe, 35, 40 years ago. After World War II, when Hollywood was largely a right of center town. I mean, they're all donating to Ike, and half of them were had served and fought real Nazis, like my grandfather in the Battle of the Bulge. But I mean, I think we can go directly to the customer now, and I think and I've done that through crowdfunding. I've done that through investors. There's a lot of ways to do this. Nick and I have a fantastic idea for a graphic novel, which is a script that he has that he's wanted to make into a movie. Is that
the script I read, Nick?
Yeah.
Oh,
Infiltration.
dude, guys, I read this, Nick. It was quite an honor. Real quick story about this. So Nick, a while back, sent me this really cool script, and he goes, "Hey, do me a favor, man. Just kind of scrub it for gun stuff. It's like it sort of makes sense. I'm not. There's guys who know more about guns than me, but like from the military perspective and the tactics and the weapons, does it make sense?" And I took time, and I actually was writing lots of notes on all the funny one-liners Nick had in that shit, and it's a really great script. And it was funny because I remember when I started reading it, Nick, I thought, oh, they're going to look at this and think this is some kind of, racist BS. Right. And what was great about that story, when you stick with it, the arc that you get through, you go, like Nick, it is really good because the things that you throw in with even the quote unquote bad guys, it humanized them in a way. And it also, there was a lot of surprises. Like you guys, that's got to get out because it's a really good story. And I had fun talking about the gun shit too. That was
it's awesome. It's that script is a throwback, and I mean that like in the best possible sense. It's a movie that probably could have gotten made in the 80s or the 90s. I think it's probably the closest thing to it is the Sicario genre, which is also I look at and I'm just kind of like, how does that get made today? Other than the fact that Taylor Sheridan can do whatever he wants.
Is that something, Nick, that you can still work on as far as getting filmed, or is it just kind of like you do the best you can?
No, it's we're talking to people about it.
Yeah, cool.
I mean that's I think the fact that there are customers out there and there's a market is what we need to focus on, and you can find the money for these projects eventually. Yeah. And maybe it's a graphic novel first and then it gets adapted into live action. Who cares? Our side just needs to start storytelling to get our messages across, because I think if we've learned anything, we can't ignore Hollywood. We can't ignore culture, music, art. We have to control it.
But here's a frustrating thing. Andrew Breitbart was talking about this 12 years ago. And I feel like here it is 12 years later, and we're even further behind the 8 ball when it comes to the culture.
That's interesting,
We're getting screwed even harder, and there's less and less opportunity. And by the way, so I don't know how many. I don't know if you guys have seen the Dave Chappelle stand-up, the last Chappelle special. Dave Chappelle special. Chappelle went out and just eviscerates the left, and he's not even one of us. He's a Democrat. He goes out there and he destroys political correctness, and he destroys all of this wokeness. And it's like he can do it because he's a made guy, because he doesn't need to make another penny in his life, and he doesn't give a shit.
That was Nick's always said that. Nick's always said that too. Nick's successful. If they shut down Nick Searcy, he doesn't give a crap. But like up and coming people who are trying to get in the business, that get crushed.
That's the problem. Is there's no pipeline for it. Like you can wait until you get somebody who's a made person who can then give everyone the finger on their way out. But the problem is we don't have a sustainable and it can't just be the Hallmark movie shit, man. Like, you want to know? Like, I don't want that crap because it doesn't interest me. I don't want to see it. I want to see good. I want to see some like a great action movie or something that's not woke. That really makes you being an American.
The Daily Wire put one out this week.
That's my segue. That's the segue. That's the perfect segue. We're basically staying within the culture war, but moving from TV to film at this point. Daily Wire, along with producer Dallas Saunier. Dallas has produced a bunch of S. Craig Zoller films like Bone Tomahawk, Brawl in Cell Block 99, and
those are great.
Dragged Across Concrete. Yeah, they're fantastic films. They're all about $20 million films, basically. This guy, is basically kind of doing the same thing that M. Night Shyamalan has been doing over the last couple of years, just making smaller films and focusing on story. But Dallas had this, I guess, and then sold it to Daily Wire. They produced it. It's a new film called Run, Hide, Fight. It's about a teen caught up in a school shooting, and she does the unthinkable. She fights back. And our friend Christian Toto has reviewed it and described it as an indie thriller which delivers smart, arresting action. He said it also packs gritty girl power without woke theatrics. I have not seen it. However, the trailer looks awesome. Lisa watched it the other night at the premiere, and she said it was well done. There was some, kind of sort of the typical sort of teenage tropes. And she even said that one of the bad guys was aping Christian Slater in Heathers, doing a real heavy JD bit, which pretty cool, actually. Greetings and salutations.
That's funny.
But again, this is really good news, man. I mean, honestly, you might not like Ben, and some people don't, but I give him props for putting his money where his mouth is. People want to be entertained. Marshall McLuhan said it. The medium is the message, and I think that the right need to understand that. If you want to get your messages across, utilize mediums which people consume, especially young people. And frankly, that's not white papers. It's not some fucking report from a think tank. It's comic books, it's graphic novels, it's animation, it's movies, and this is a good sign. And it looks like they had a real budget on this too.
So because Ben Shapiro made it, does that mean she fights back with facts and logic, or what's the
a violin? A violin.
Yeah, right.
It's really Jeremy Boring.
On a serious note, it did look very good from the trailer.
She's gonna play Schindler's List on the violin and put everybody to sleep. So, Nick, what did you think of this? Because I know you and I have been talking about this.
Well, I was talking to Dallas Sonier the other day. I said, your movie is good, but there's a real lack of Nick Searcy in it. You really missed an opportunity there.
Yeah, big mistake.
He really wanted to reach a wider audience, but I didn't. He said there was some mix up, and I just didn't get my call time.
Treat Williams, Nick Searcy. I mean, come on, it's not even close, frankly.
But no, I think it's a good sign, and I think that the Daily Wire, this is Jeremy Boring's operation, and they have talked about doing this for a long time. Jeremy made a film a few years ago. He's always been an aspiring film director, and he's always talked about the same things that Breitbart talked about, that we have to start affecting the culture. And I think this is a huge step in the right direction. I hope they keep going. I hope they produce more content. And really more Nick Searcy heavy content so that people actually watch the films.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing is it does not look like, to Chris's point, this does not look like a Hallmark movie. It does not look like some low-budget crap. It looks really good. A lot of that is the benefit of technology nowadays. You don't have to shoot on film. You don't have that huge overhead of it's like $1,000 a foot for real cellophane. Now you can go digital and add in the film grain and make it look organic and have everything look, like a $250 million movie, frankly, for the price of 20.
One of the things that Jeremy said during that telecast where they were introducing the film is if he makes a movie and James Dobson endorses it, then they failed. And that's kind of the same thing I've been saying for years. We have to start making movies from our perspective that are not Hallmark, that are not just for the converted, that are not just for Christians or whatever. Right. We have to sort of imbue real stories, good stories, with our values rather than just putting our values out there with a bad story and thinking that that's enough.
I want to see visual storytelling that is out there reaching people who are not one of us.
Right.
And by the way, people to the conclusion on their own through the story.
Yeah, but so we complain all the time about how the next generation, younger generations, are brainwashed, and they absolutely are. But they're only getting it from one side. To Nick's point, we don't need films that are just about making the true believers go amen. We actually need good stories in all different mediums that make the next generation think I hadn't thought about it like that before.
Right.
Maybe this woke stuff is maybe it's a little much. Maybe, you know what I mean? Again, I think about that Dave Chappelle special and the number of liberals I know who watched it, who afterwards said, Chappelle was on to something. He's right. Yeah, this is gone. It's gone too far. But it took if we'd have just made a documentary about how bad wokeness was, like, we'd be the only people who watched it. You know what I mean? Like, nobody would watch it who we actually need to see it, which is why I saw the trailer for that, the new movie the Daily Wiler's put out. It looks amazing. I mean, it looks really freaking good. It looks like interesting. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't look like something that they just made trying to convince Chris Barron, the MAGA guy, to watch it.
Funny story about Nick Searcy again. So when he was kind or dumb enough to agree to be on Hollywood Weapons, because we did an episode about Justified, we tested some gun stuff. Picture this: we go to. I've never met Nick Searcy in my life, right? Super. And I mean, I can't wait to meet this idiot. So we go, and I say idiot, Nick, in a complimentary way. Yeah, you get it.
I get it, dumbass.
So he's my man. So I go, and he's sitting there, but he was later on. He was so gracious. But just picture this. So I go walking up, and they're filming stuff, and Nick is sitting there with a script, and he's just sitting there. And I said, "Hey, Nick, good to meet you." He's like, "Yeah." And I go, "Hey, what are you doing?" He goes, "Yeah, I'm just going through my script and just throwing out anything where I am not in it because it's not important." And he had 3 pages of it. He goes, "This is the meat of it."
Script analysis. That's what I call script analysis.
That's right, script analysis. Dude, you were so funny. And then we just hit it off and just kept making jokes. And you took me around your house. I met your wife, really nice gal. And then you gave me a box of cigars. And you even agreed to they didn't have this written in, but you even did a little bit like you're telling me, almost like you're yelling at Raylan Givens, like you get back in here, and it was perfect. So I know everybody thinks Nick Searcy, and understandably so, is a really bad person, but he's actually pretty nice. It's
true.
I'm a wrestling heel. I've been cultivating that persona for 16 years.
Boom. But you know what, Nick, though? You're our wrestling heel. That's right. And that's what matters.
It takes a long time to get to that soft center of Nick. But when you do, you realize that, he has a heart. It's there.
He's driven Matt away. He just said, fuck it. I'm not going to stay here with that.
What's funny? I just thought of this. Lisa and I were in Virginia a couple of years ago taking a tour of the NRA Museum, and they have the Hollywood guns section.
Yeah.
Yeah. I got to hold the they took it out of the case and let me hold it, which was the Magnum Force Dirty Harry 44 Magnum, which is on loan to the museum from John Milius. It's even got a little plaque on the handle that says to John Milius from Warner Brothers. Thing is,
that's awesome. Yeah.
Fucking canon, dude. I mean, it's like Sinatra turned down that part because he couldn't hold the gun. And it's like, I'm sitting there holding it. I'm like, I get it. This is insane.
Is that true? Is that really true? He was offered that part. He didn't want to do it because the gun was too big.
Yeah. Yeah. I think he had broken his wrist. And when he went to go hold that gun, and he was also older, that was another reason why he turned it down. He thought he was too old for the part. I think, they even offered him Die Hard at one point in time, way back, and he turned it down because he thought he was just too old. But they have the Thomas Magnum's 45. They've got the Beretta that was used in Die Hard and Lethal Weapon. So anyway, we're there checking out all this cool stuff, and we go over and we have lunch. They have a cafeteria there, right? And they're cooking steaks. I mean, no shit. So I'm sitting with a bunch of NRA execs eating lunch in this cafeteria, eating steak. And I asked them, I said, have you guys seen the new Death Wish with Bruce Willis? And no, they didn't even know. Death Wish, what's that? Charles Bronson? I'm like, no, they remade it. Eli Roth, who's a pretty, well-known director, a talented guy, remade Death Wish. And it's set in Chicago, of all places, which is more dangerous than Baghdad.
Gun violence capital of the country sometimes, yeah.
4,000 people shot there last year. It's unbelievable. So it's like anybody that says from Chicago that says they know how to organize society, fuck them. I don't listen to them. They elected Beetlejuice, for Christ's sake. But I'm sitting here thinking to myself, if you guys would funnel some of your money into producing films like this, which push a message of capital doctrine and defending yourself, defending your home. There's a scene, Bruce Willis's daughter even quotes Milton Friedman in the movie.
I remember that.
Yeah, that's true. That's right, man. I forgot about that.
There's a scene in it where Bruce Willis is, and Vincent D'Onofrio, who's his brother, they're like having this heart to heart, and Bruce Willis says to him, he goes something like, if a man can't defend his own family in his home, what's he worth?
Yeah.
His life worth, and you don't have to be right, left, or center to get that message and to understand it, or to
one thing I would like to do, and it's I probably past my prime now because I was doing the acting thing when I got out of active duty, and then when the war started in 2001, I joined back up to the National Guard Green Berets, so I was gone all the time. It kind of turfed that normal career of going on auditions. I got the hosting stuff, but what I would like to do is, I see there's military movies. It's funny, all the military movies in many cases are made by people who have based their military knowledge and experience on other previous military movies. And so, right, Nick? And so it's like there's become this sort of common knowledge of how we speak and how we act and all the things we do, but it wasn't really learned from guys like me, like it was learned from previous military movies. And it's almost become like, well, you watched Apocalypse Now, so then you do Platoon, and it's based on bullshit all the way through. Guys were not smoking weed on a combat patrol in Vietnam. I'm sorry, that didn't happen. But even now today, it's kind of hard. I think no one wants to touch. We've been at war for 20 years, dude. I came back in and shit, man. I was in for like the last 16 years of that one. But it'd be good to have us, to have someone make one of these movies that actually has. And they do a pretty good job of it, the tactical piece, because there's so many tactical advisors out there now. Like if you have guys looking like Charlie's Angels, then you clearly were lazy and you didn't hire someone to show the actors how to handle weapons. But like they still miss it. Generally they miss the ball because they're not really getting into our head. They're getting into the heads of other characters of previous military movies. Does that make sense, Nick?
Yeah.
Right? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's not based on real life. It's based on other fiction. And that
it can either do one of two things. Sometimes they lionize us into these like unstoppable, ass-kicking heroes, which we'll laugh about, or they turn us into these sort of broken, effed up guys that, I get it, right? We come home from the war and we can't really fit in. That's a part of it. Everyone goes through that. But somewhere in between there is really the truth. And they just don't seem that interested in making that yet. And they're also afraid to touch on the idea, the enemy we're fighting. Because if we talk about that, making movies about killing Nazis is easy, right? It's easy. That's an easy thing to do. They still do it now. They're still making movies about that because that's an easy one to touch. But if you talk about some of the people that we've had to deal with over in the Middle East where I've worked, people are very sensitive about that. And they're afraid to touch that. Is the Greatest Generation a bunch of worthless racist bigots that should be canceled because when they came back from World War II, they called their enemy Japs and Krauts because they did.
Yeah.
Right. Because that was their enemy. But now, you know what I mean? So like, there's this weird avoidance of like, dude, I've lost a lot of friends in this war and I get it. It's all volunteer, but like, they haven't really touched it yet. Like Bigelow does the movie Hurt Locker. Everybody in EOD, Explosive Ordnance Disposal, hated that movie because she got a couple things, right? Like the grocery store when he's like, oh man, that was because I felt that too. I've come back. I don't belong here. But like a guy in EOD, Explosive Ordnance Disposal, going up and kicking a door with all his men around, no matter how disturbed he is, he would never do that and risk his guys' lives. And so they tend to make us into cartoon characters for either like super powerful or super broken. And we're kind of somewhere in between, and they haven't hit that spot yet, I don't think.
I think Generation Kill got it the best. Out of all of, and that was Gen X. That's the 1st Marine, 1st Recon that blitzkrieged into Baghdad in 2003.
The Rudy Reyes guys.
Rudy Reyes. What's his name? Josh Ray Person. The Iceman. There's a bunch of guys. A lot of those guys were in the show, and not only technical advisors, but also they acted. But that was HBO. That was Evan Wright, who was an in-bed war correspondent in the Humvee with those guys, and he wrote that whole thing for Rolling Stone. He had previously written for like Hustler. So he's the most unlikely dude of all to throw into a Humvee, and these guys rode straight into Baghdad, and we're just on this. You watch it's a 8-part miniseries that HBO produced.
Yeah,
I thought it was really well done. I thought it was perfect, and I thought it kind of hit that center where you got to know these guys as real people, and they were relatable. Plus, you felt like you were in that fucking Humvee, dude. I mean, the dirt and the grind.
Yeah, and we're really a bunch of knuckleheads capable of great things, but also capable of making great mistakes. I'm just waiting for Nick Searcy to turn me into a very successful washed up kind of action hero kind of guy. So
I'm sorry. I kind of zoned out after Brett mentioned Hustler.
He wrote the letters as well.
Yeah, I remember his articles. I love the articles in that magazine.
He cut his teeth at jugs, from what I understand. Anyway, we were talking about Bruce Willis, and I got a funny Bruce Willis segue. So, and this is also from Bounding into Comics. My buddy John Trent reported on this the other day. Bruce Willis was in Los Angeles because I guess he's quarantining with his ex-wife and his kids. I don't know who does that. But yeah, he's quarantining with Demi, which sounds like all kinds of fun. And he's in a Los Angeles Rite Aid, and he got kicked out because he refused to wear a mask. Now, in the photo, he's wearing like a chamois scarf, basically, like a bandana. And he's just standing there. He almost looks like Madame Tussauds wax figurine when I look at this picture of him, because he's just like completely blank. But he's sitting there, and he's got his scarf on, and apparently he went in to go buy some stuff, and a bunch of customers started yelling at him to put his mask on. So he didn't say anything. He just dropped his shit and walked out. And then he goes home and he records a fucking video with his daughters, and they're all wearing like these matching masks, I mean, they might as well have been wearing like matching pajamas too or something. And he's like, "Hey, everybody, mask up." And I'm just like, dude, what happened to you? Like, he used to be Planet Hollywood. I mean, it was him, Sly, Arnold, and to me, they all did that together. They were all sort of like the right of center Hollywood when that was an okay thing to be in the 90s. You weren't a pariah. I don't know. I was excited to see him do this because I walk into Walgreens all the time without a mask on, because they let you do that. So Bruce should have picked a Walgreens. He picked a Rite Aid.
What happened was he left the Walgreens or whatever he was at, fuming about how stupid it is. And then as he got into his apartment building, he realized, I want to work again. So then he had to do the whole "I was in the wrong, ask up" whole routine.
His people got to him, essentially.
Correct. Yeah.
It's gonna be interesting, I think, to see how this shakes out in a couple. It's going to take a couple years for people to maybe write some books, real books about this, and talk about how the country really got scammed with COVID, because it was that doesn't minimize. Actually, I have a friend of our family who actually, they said he was hospitalized and he never came out. So it doesn't minimize the fact that there are people who got sick and died and got hurt by it. That's absolutely, I get it. But there was a middle way when this started, if you remember back in January, and it was like, hey, listen, we don't know a lot about this. China clearly lied. It's not, they didn't even know what they're doing. So what they said was, hey, listen, here's what we're going to do, social distancing, wash your hands. Masks weren't even involved yet because they said it wasn't even transmittable. And, minimize your kind of activity for just a little bit for a couple weeks. And also the biggest thing was protect people who are clearly vulnerable, because, the SARS virus in 2009 was killing kids. This one was killing old people and sick people. Okay, so America was on board with that kind of middle way. Okay, we can do that because we don't want to get the hospitals crushed. And then it became F you. You're not leaving your house till you get a vaccine, or there's not a cure. Oh, by the way, your businesses, sorry, you can't make money. And, all these people are losing their livelihoods. Guess who never lost a paycheck or missed a meal? Politicians. The media people that are sitting there from their high horse, denigrating you as a white supremacist for wanting to get back to work. And I just think it's going to be someone's going to put some really good synthesis of what happened with the World Health Organization, our own CDC, our government, because we all know what happened, man. Biden was their character. I think the Dems had resigned themselves to losing the election to Donald Trump, because it's tough to beat a president. No matter how much you say about him, we're like the lowest black unemployment, gas is cheap, energy independence. We told China to go F itself. Like all these, it's kind of hard to unseat a president with that. And so I think they had resigned themselves. As a matter of fact, it was obvious they did, because in January last year, they were already talking about another impeachment. This is before COVID hit. So that was going to be their plan. Keep attacking him, cutting him, backstabbing him 4 more years. Basically, they were in a power position because the media was backing up. And all of a sudden, COVID hit, and they nominated Joe Biden, who was really, I think, a throwaway candidate. He'd already tried twice and failed. Obama never even endorsed him. And so I thought they're just like, they're going to kind of we're going to take this hit, and we'll just still attack Trump and make him look like a jerk, and we'll win in 2024. And then COVID hit. And then they were like, oh my God, we actually have a shot here. We protect Joe Biden, don't let him come out. And we just crush everybody and make it Trump's fault. We had a vaccine in like 9 months. That's kind of a remarkable thing.
And the media flat out lied to us and said it wasn't possible. In the summer, Trump was saying we're going to have a vaccine by the end of this year. All of the fact checkers were out there saying,
no, of course,
this is a lie. There's no way this will happen. And not one of those people has ever been held accountable. Not one news outlet has come out and said, you want to know what? We got it wrong. In July, when we said that Trump was lying to you and there's no way that we could get a vaccine, we got it wrong. I would have so much respect for any news outlet that would just say we got it wrong, because you did. You 100% got. You don't even have to say we intended to do it to hurt Trump. Just admit one time, like, hey, we were wrong. We screwed up.
Matt, I cut you off, Matt. I'm sorry. What were you going to say?
I'm just going to briefly say, one of the nice things about social media is you can see the goalposts shift in real time. So you can go back and look at all these people who said it's never going to happen, and now the narrative is, well, they're not distributing it fast enough. And I'm going, well, you said we could have it in 2025. So even though it's not going great, we still got 10 million out so far. So,
yeah, I mean, I remember 15 days to flatten the curve.
Well, the reason they won't admit that they're wrong is because they did do it on purpose. That's true.
That's true.
They can't just say, hey, we made a mistake, because they didn't make a mistake. They did it deliberately.
Right. And
there was especially with like when we talk about the news, when they say the news is biased, there's mistakes, there's biases, and then there's an agenda. And so that's what this was. This was an agenda, actually, that they kind of all bought in on. And again, you can say two things. You can say that we need to do the best we can to protect the population, and yet not say we need to destroy the United States economy. And, they literally destroy the economy to win an election. I mean,
and we let them usurp this whole idea of following the science, because the fact is they haven't been following the science at all. So I represent a trade association that is all of the gyms and health clubs in the U.S. 25% of gyms in this country are permanently closed.
Oh, man.
A recession-proof industry that was crushing it has been absolutely devastated. Study after study, including state health department studies, show that there is absolutely no proof that gyms and health clubs are a source of community spread. Quite the opposite.
Yeah, right.
One of the only ways we have to have people protect themselves against the worst kind of COVID, effects are getting people active and healthy. Like, they literally have kept gyms in places like California closed this entire year. They've made people more vulnerable to the disease and destroyed an industry, all in the name of making the orange man look bad. Like that was what this was about. I mean, I can't believe there hasn't been some massive bloodletting where people were just like, how did we ignore science? How do these people who said they're following the science, now we know they weren't. Now we know there's no good. It happened recently. Pennsylvania shut down gyms again, even though there is study after study after same. New York was releasing data that day that said absolutely no community spread in gyms. Gyms should be able to be open. They're not. The problem in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania is still saying we're going to close down the gyms because it's best. It's like, you people weren't even doing what you said you were doing.
I just saw an article, Chris. I don't know if it's correct. There was a dude who was on Fox quite a bit. He had that Attila's gym in New Jersey. Yep. I think they just took his gym away, right? He just lost
his bank account, his business bank account. Yeah.
Matt, didn't they also clean out his personal bank account as well?
I don't know. I mean, I think they technically would have the authority if the fines are against him and not just the business. But I don't know how that works. If I had read that just the business.
I had read that they pierced his LLC, which is, I thought that's illegal. I thought that's protected. C corp, S corp, LLCs.
I know, if you got a legal judgment against someone, you can seize their bank account. But I didn't know you could do it without a trial or that with just a state fine. I didn't know that was possible.
Right, and are these laws that they're enforcing on Attila's gym and on the gyms? Are they passed or are they just mandates?
Well, I don't think it's possible to have passed them. It seems like they're all things they just made up out of thin air. They have the ability to create law for a public health purpose, apparently, and that's what they enforce it with.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's been a single documented case of COVID coming out of that gym, even.
No.
Yeah, I mean, exercising boosts your immune system. I mean, this is just kind of, academics 101. I think everybody agrees with that.
And I'm kind of confused with the whole ordeal with him. Is it? I guess I'm a little out of the loop. I mean, I have a gym I go to. It's Planet Fitness, so it's not a real gym. But like, were they not? I've set the lunk alarm off twice. It's humiliating.
It's pretty though. They have a lot of.
So I don't know. Like, what is the tell is something wrong? Are they not abiding by social distancing? And I only ask that because, like, at my gym, there is no check whatsoever. They do the little like temperature thing. They're supposed to ask you 3 questions. They don't 90% of the time. Sometimes it's packed, sometimes it's not. There's never any control of is it more than 25%. Like, I just don't get. I think they're getting singled out for political purposes because every other gym I go to is the exact same thing.
Yeah, but he stayed open in so there was a time in New Jersey when all indoor operations of gyms had ceased. He stayed open during that time. And by the way, again, I represent the gyms. A lot of gyms stayed open during that time.
Yeah.
The difference was this guy made a thing about it.
Mm-hmm.
This guy
he was on Tucker multiple times going like this.
Yeah, and so you're right. Yeah, they're now going after him. This is a politically motivated thing. But he wasn't alone. There was wide-scale civil disobedience in states all across the country where gyms just said, I can't close. If I close, it'll be closed for good. Every single person who works here will not have a job. So I'm sorry, you can fine me, but I'm staying open. And most police departments said, we're not enforcing this. We're not going to gyms and padlocking their doors and arresting owners. Like, it's not happening. So don't ask us to do this.
Yeah, we've got sheriffs out here too, up in Yavapai County and Cochise and Santa Cruz, who all just said, we're not going to enforce this. Cases are so low, and plus we don't have the manpower. And frankly, we took an oath to protect and defend the Constitution. None of this stuff is passed by a legislature, so we're not going to enforce it. And I think the sheriffs have a lot of power. Sheriffs have the power to kick feds out. A lot of people don't know that, but sheriffs have a lot of local power. And I think that's a positive thing to see. But what I love seeing is what's going on in Italy. You've got 50,000 restaurants over the weekend that all organized together to open up. I mean, 50,000. Okay, yeah. Mexico's got about 500 that organized and just opened up at 100% capacity, no social distancing, no masks. Same with Italy. They just said, fuck it, we're not doing this anymore. And a buddy of mine said that basically in Italy, they have like the Camorra, which is, I guess, like the mob, basically protecting the businesses. I mean, that's basically who's standing in between the local authorities going in and shutting down businesses. But at the same time, if you got 50,000, how do you police that? And I'm sitting here saying, how come Americans haven't done this yet? Yeah. Why aren't American businesses protecting their own private property, their livelihoods? A lot of these people, they're never going to be able to get this back if they shut down if they're in their 40s or 50s.
I have to jump off of this in a minute, but I want to say I think the problem, and I think we all agree on this, is what saddens me is kind of like I guess I should have expected it, but it's alarming, and it's kind of it hurts seriously to see how many people are just willing to just give up their freedom, man.
Roll over.
They're really giving. They're just really. And it's all maybe because of false sense of, well, if I do this, I'll be safe, or I'll get to be in the power group, right, Nick? I mean, it's so obvious. And I guess we can thank our educational system for decades of being told of telling kids that, your country sucks, the government's the way to go, free enterprise, all that. I mean, like, it really has been indoctrinated. And to see so many people willingly go along with their demise. They don't think they are, but they really are. And it has nothing to do with right or left, Yeah.
Well, and Terry, like, there are certain things I understand. Like, yeah, we don't have a constitutional right. I don't have a constitutional right to go work out at the gym. Like,
yeah.
But they have said, like, Saturday Night Live gets a free pass to tape their episodes. But if you want to go to Mass in New York City, tough shit. You're not like, but
can't go.
You got to constitute. Like, to me, I'm like, how is there not just widespread people saying, like, this is fundamentally, we can't, like, it's too bad. The Constitution says you have the freedom of religion. There's no disclaimer for, unless it's during a pandemic, and then you can abridge this freedom. I mean, like, I can't remember who I heard say it first, but if there's a exception to our freedoms, like if we have these freedoms except under the following circumstances, then we don't have any freedoms. Like if they can simply say it's an emergency, so therefore you don't have the freedom of religion anymore, the freedom of assembly, you don't have the freedom of speech, like then we don't have those freedoms. They're meaningless.
But that goes along with Matt's point, which was exactly right. In order to be able to sustain that, they had to keep moving goalposts because you had to keep shifting it. Like at first it was slow the spread, 2 weeks, hospitals don't get overrun. Then it was like, we hold on a minute, lock yourself in. Yeah. And like you said, Matt, which was great, you saw it happening in real time. Like it was like, holy crap. And when I was so angry when I saw Fauci a long time ago, someone said something to him about, these businesses being closed and people losing lives. I realized that it's inconvenient.
Yeah.
He said that. He often said that. And so Mr. Fauci, Dr. Fauci, it's not inconvenient. It's catastrophic.
And there was an interview like around that time where he was asked if like people on hookup apps could still meet, and he said yes. And I'm going, so you just want to be the cool doctor? Like it's not. And by the way, like how is he the one guy we have to deal with the pandemic? Like why don't we have a team of like 100 doctors? Why do we just have one dude named Tony?
Such a huge mistake. And he loves. You've seen those pictures of him. He loves the notoriety.
Yeah,
he loves being the guy they talk to. He loves the celebrity. And I'm not saying he has some sort of sinister ulterior motive, but I think he did enjoy being the guy that they talked to. And I thought, how out of touch do you have to be as a protected, ensconced public employee to sit there and say, I think it might be okay if we never shake hands again. Oh, life's never going to be the same. And I know it's an inconvenience. I'm like, are you?
Well,
what? How are you cool with that?
This coming from a career fucking bureaucrat who's been there since the 80s working on the AIDS vaccine. How's that going, Tony?
Right.
The guy is an absolute disaster. He's a fucking bureaucrat.
It just bothers me that so many people in the country are willing to just go, yeah, cool.
I know.
Like literally
California, especially out in California, it's like people, you walk down the street outside, you see people riding their bicycles with their masks on or walking their dogs with the mask on. But they're afraid they're going to give it to the dog,
Well,
and then
and I'm sitting here
in the street when they see me, I'm not wearing a mask. And my friend out there, he puts it. He says it's like we've suddenly turned into an episode of The Walking Dead, and it's like zombies are walking around with their masks on.
Yep. It's like being Moses. If you walk in the street with no mask, it just clears in both directions. It's epic.
It's true. I had it today. I was walking the dog. Some lady's walking up. I'm outside. It's 77 degrees out. It's beautiful. Tons of sunshine. Everybody's getting their vitamin D that's outside. Wearing a mask. Walks on the other side of the street.
No. They're zombies. They're crazy.
I'm sitting here thinking to myself, okay, these are the people that are going to help save the republic. These are the people who are going to take their businesses back. Give me a break. We are a weak and decadent culture.
I just realized, though, they might put a liberal on top spot. What if you were a black man and she crossed the street to avoid you?
Ooh.
Racist.
Ooh, boy, no kidding. Boy, that's a tough one. So
and it's like, how would we have ever done anything? How would Columbus have discovered America? We can't. Well, we might get sick. We can't go to the moon. We don't know what the hell's up there. It's just.
Terry. We were talking about Megadeth and Hook and Mouth off air.
Great song.
I'm listening to a lot. This is all the '80s heavy metal that I grew up with. Metallica and Justice for All, Megadeth, Peace Sells, but Who's Buying?
They got it right.
I've been going back and listening to that stuff and listening to the lyrics, which are all largely centered around freedom of speech, which was spurned on by the PMRC.
Right.
And you had Dee Snider, you had John Denver, you had Frank Zappa go up on Capitol Hill and fight against freedom of speech and anti-censorship. You can't just be for freedom of speech. You also have to be really, really pro anti-censorship, right? So being, the First Amendment necessarily isn't there to protect polite speech. It's there to protect the worst kind of speech of all.
100%.
The stuff that we just abhor, but that's the point. You have to be an adult to live in a free society and deal with this shit. But, I'm thinking to myself, where does Gen X get this natural tendency to question authority and reject the rules? And part of it is from 80s heavy metal. and also a lot of the movies we consumed from that era, which was all about. I mean, you can even look at Caddyshack. That's all about blowing off the rules and rejecting the snobs.
Well, Donald Trump is Rodney Dangerfield.
Yeah, that was
back to school and all. I mean, that's Donald Trump. He's the nouveau riche jerk who comes in and is like, "Hey, get out of here,"
There was a brilliant article written at The Atlantic, and you can still find it online. It's called The Caddyshack Election. Okay. And it's all about, this was prior to this was in the primaries, this was right before Trump won. But this guy wrote this brilliant fucking article about how Trump is basically, a Caddyshack, the 2016 election is the snobs versus the slobs. And all of us in flyover country are the slobs. And Rodney Dangerfield is the nouveau riche, slob who infiltrates Bushwood Country Club, the GOP. He's not wanted there. He'll never be a member. No way. But he might come in and buy it.
Buy the place. Yeah.
Maybe become a member of this crummy snobatorium. Yeah, maybe I'll buy it. And then then Judge Snell, who's like Mitt Romney, he's like, buy Bushwood. Then he strangles him. But it's like, it was so perfect because he's like, he pisses off all the right people, but at the same time, he's one of us. And it was just this brilliant synopsis of what was going on culturally. Nobody really got it. I shared it a couple times, but nobody really picked up on it. But it's so perfect, and it's exactly where we are today. And now it's just kind of back to business as usual, I suppose.
By the way, on that point, I wanted to make this point earlier when we were talking about MAGA stuff. The number one reason I stay involved in politics is 100% because of the culture war stuff. Because I think that there is a culture war that has been going on in this country for decades, where average Americans in flyover country get absolutely shit on. We're the last people in the world that it's still fine to make fun of. We're the people, by the way, the system has been broken for these people for decades. Washington has given a crap about these people.
Yeah.
They've watched their main streets just get rolled up. They've watched the opioid epidemic go through the countryside. They don't care. West Virginia is a fucking, punchline to all of these people. They don't give a shit.
Right. Yeah.
One of these people, Paul Ryan wouldn't stop for 5 seconds in West Virginia. He'd be fucking terrified of it. And the fact is that the blue collar billionaire Donald Trump was the only guy, somebody said it before, who wasn't embarrassed of his own voters. He wasn't embarrassed of us. He actually cared about, is he a rich liberal elitist from New York? Yeah. And for some reason, he actually gave a shit about these flyover people. And that's the thing that the party has fundamentally got to get going forward is you have to care about your base. And maybe you don't like it. Maybe you wish you had a different base. Maybe you wish the country club was your base, but there's just not enough of them. Maybe you wish Wall Street was your base, but it wasn't. It's your fucking gun-toting rural Americans who are watching fucking NASCAR and wrestling. And that's your base. And you got to fight for them. That's it. Or there is no party. There is no Republican Party. We don't have to debate what the future is. There is no party without us. That's it.
Washington's like Hollywood. They're just in business to impress each other. They don't give a damn about.
Yeah, that's true, man. That's true. And Trump. The thing with Trump, I said this when he first came into office. I go, you don't got to overthink this guy. For Donald Trump, the United States was the new Trump Corporation. That's how he looked at it. So that's kind of all you got to know. So for everything that we were doing, you could see Trump, just based on your story, Chris, about, hey, these guys, you could see him in the White House. He's looking at some papers. He's like, so what's the deal with these NATO guys? We give them all this money and they're not doing anything. He's like, no, fuck that. We're not getting rid of it. Well, Mr. President, that's a time-honored tradition. No. We're renegotiating that. He looks at the China thing. He's like, tell me why we got to pay tariffs to sell our stuff there, but they flood our country with this. And they're no. Well, Mr. President, and blah, blah, blah. He's like, no, F that. We're doing that. What if this NAFTA thing? Not a good deal. We're not doing that. Get out. So for him, I don't think he really gives a crap. He doesn't give a crap what color. I think Trump wants to make money, and he wants everybody to make money, because if you're making money, everybody's happy. And so right. I think for President Trump, the country was always the new Trump Corporation. And I think a lot of people took offense to that. They're like, well, we're the leader of, yeah, we are. But you get to be a leader by being by an effectively run and efficient business. And we haven't been an effective business. We've just been bleeding money and navel gazing at things like who gets to use the bathroom and putting different people in this because of their color. And I think Trump just blew that up, and it just really pissed a lot of people off. It just pissed so many people off.
He pissed all the right people off, and that's largely why we voted for him. And going forward, I mean, I'll vote for any candidate, frankly, going forward, who pisses off all the right people. I think that's a good barometer.
It's gonna take some balls though, because they're gonna have people coming after them.
Absolutely. So anyway, guys, I know Terry, you got to run, so we can wrap it up. We're clocking in at about an hour. Let's see. Let's go through everybody. Chris, where you got anything going on you want to plug, and where can people find you?
My column is usually at the Political Insider on Fridays when the Political Insider is not taking a vacation on Fridays. So there was no column this week, but there will be a column next week. You can follow me on Twitter, Chris R. Barron. I'm on Kennedy like every other week. I don't know why. At some point, I guess Fox will smarten up and stop having me on, but I'm still on.
Don't say that. Nick, what do you got going on, and where can people find you?
You can go to shedhisgrace.com and get a copy of my documentary, which is a movie about the Bible and the founding of the country and the Constitution and the relationship between God and America through the years. And it's also a comedy. And
it's very funny.
You can also catch my continuing non-essential walk in Los Angeles on Twitter. I'm on day 41 now. Today I'm going to be day 42. I'm going to go take a walk right after this.
I love your walks, Nick. They're fantastic. So keep it up, man. Matt, what about you?
So BonginoReport.com is probably 95% of my life right now. Besides the other 5% being this new show. And then the new book coming out soon, Dumb and Dumber, about de Blasio and Cuomo. It's already out, actually, an audiobook and Kindle, but I guess I think they had some printing issues with the hardcover, but it should be out on the 2nd.
Awesome. Terry, what's going on? Where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter, and also I have a few shows that are on. I mean, I'm not filming anything now, but Hollywood Weapons, the first few seasons is on Amazon. It's also, you can get all of them on Outdoor Channel. A bunch of old stuff is on Amazon, and I'm just sitting here taking care of old dogs. So yeah, that's what I do.
Yeah. Amazon's got Dude, You're Screwed as well for free.
They do.
You can stream that.
They do.
Man, I have rewatched those so many times. There's nothing more fun than watching Jake puke his guts out and get rescued. It's so
Poor Jake.
He's like, that's fantastic. I love it. All right, well, we are out of time. That's it for this episode of Political Punks. I want to thank Nick, Chris, Matt, and Terry for being here. Please like and share this video far and wide. Subscribe to the Political Insider and hit the bell for notifications so you never miss any of our exciting new episodes. Nick is masking up because he's going outside.
Nick's getting ready to go.
Make sure you mask up, everybody.
That's right. He's going to get in a full mop suit after this.
Somebody might get sick.
Oh, my God. I'll see you guys soon. All right, have a good weekend.
All right, stay frosty, brother.
Thanks, boy.